Hey guys, so this is part 2 of the transitions to essays PowerPoint, and we talked last time about kind of the basic structure of an essay, how it's similar to the paragraphs that you've been writing, which are going to be the body paragraphs in an essay, and the general approach to writing an essay, kind of the step-by-step process you can use. So now we're going to go through each of those steps. We're going to start with analyzing the prompt and pre-writing, which were the first 2 steps, but I've kind of put them together here since they normally do go together. So, in general, there are certain parts to an essay prompt. My prompts are not this complicated, but I just kind of wanted to give you an outline of this so that you'll know what it looks like when you get to other classes. They normally start with some background information. Then you have the actual assignment or the question, guidelines for how to complete the assignment, and some additional information. So let's look at this prompt. Here's an example prompt, and as you can see, it's kind of on the long side, but many communities now require that individuals wear masks in public, and these mandates are often controversial. Some people feel that their freedom is limited by these requirements, while supporters of the mandate argue that these measures are necessary to keep everyone safe. Do you think masks should be required during the pandemic? Why or why not? Please respond in an essay of 300 to 500 words. Make sure you support your argument with logic and evidence and follow the expectations of standard English, including grammar, punctuation, and spelling. Well, that looks like a lot, but if you break it into pieces, it's a lot easier to kind of get a sense of what's being asked. So your background is this first part where the instructor is putting forth the situation and both sides of it. So many communities now require that individuals wear masks in public, and these mandates are often controversial. Some people feel that their freedom is limited by these requirements, while supporters of the mandates argue that these measures are necessary to keep everyone effective. All of that is background. But I wouldn't just skim over it because it can give you ideas on how to form your argument. The actual question, the thing that you're going to be answering is this right here. Do you agree with the mandates to wear masks during the pandemic? And then the guidelines are this last part where it says, the specific things that you need to do for this. Please respond in an essay of 300 to 500 words. Make sure you support your argument with logic and evidence and things like that. These are basically the bullet points in my assignments. Instead of doing it as one giant paragraph, I break it into pieces for you. So another thing you want to do when you're looking at these, other than to think about the different parts of the prompt, are to kind of think critically about what you're looking at. And one of the things you can do is look for keywords or phrases. These are often hints to help you form your response. So you know how I've talked about signal words or keywords in the prompts in all of the paragraphs that we've looked at so far? Well, those words often pop up in prompts, and they can tell you what kind of essay or what kind of paragraph you're writing, which in turn kind of gives you a cheat sheet for how to do it. You also want to think critically about what the prompt is asking for. So in this prompt right here, what the prompt wants to know is, do you agree with the mandates to wear the masks during the pandemic? And also, why or why not? Why or why not is pretty much always going to be a crucial part of answering a prompt, is to explain your reasoning. And you'll want to use the prompt to create your claim, the reverse the prompt thing that we've talked about so far. And I'll show you how to do that during the thesis statement very soon. I also apologize for my cat yowling. She has not let me leave the bed for like 3 days, and she is really mad that I'm doing work instead of resting. So you might hear her yelling a little bit. So here's some keywords that are worth thinking about, or at least worth kind of knowing. Argue, if you see the word argue, that means that the writer of the prompt wants you to present facts and reasons to support your position or your opinion. Compare and contrast to what they sound like. Compare is to tell how 2 things are alike. Contrast is to tell how 2 things are different. Define is like the definition paragraphs that we were doing earlier. Tell what something means, what it is, or what it does. Describe is the description paragraphs that we did at the very beginning. Tell how something looks, sounds, smells, tastes, or feels. Explain is to explain how something works, how it happens, or how to do it. We didn't do those as much because they're a little harder, but that is definitely one you might see. List is pretty easy. Give a number of facts, ideas, reasons, or other details about the topic. If you see list, though, be careful to make sure that you follow the assignment instructions. Often it will be list and in the form of an essay. So the list will actually be the evidence in your exposition rather than just a bulleted list. Persuade is the persuasive paragraphs that we were talking about. So give reasons that will be convincing for someone to agree with your position. And predict is also what it sounds like. Tell what you think will happen in the future based on the information that you have already or that you will be presenting. A lot of these probably seem familiar now. And the reason they seem familiar is because we've taken the time to kind of learn the different paragraphs and the different approaches that go with these prompt words, which are, again, words you're very, very likely to see in prompts in the future. So hopefully that makes some things make a little bit more sense as to why I've taken the approach that I have. Another thing you want to do, you don't want to skip over the guidelines at the end. Like, it's a really common mistake to get to the question part and then skip over everything else. I know it's tempting, but those guidelines, those are how you're graded. If the teacher says an essay of 300 to 500 words, they probably don't want 100 words, and they probably don't want 5,000 words. If they say use the correct expectations of standard English, then that means that they're going to be looking for standard English, and they're going to be taking points off probably for slang, or for not using contractions properly, or not using punctuation properly, or something like that. So pay attention to those things. You can kind of view the guidelines as a checklist of the things you need to make happen in order to prevent getting points taken off. One of the most important things you'll see in the guidelines is the length, because that actually governs a lot. It governs whether or not you have a paragraph, or whether or not you have an essay, or whether or not you have a research paper. So look at that, and definitely look at any requirements that are listed in the guidelines. Okay, so on pre-writing, there's a couple of ideas that are concepts that I think are really helpful here. And the first is you want to use a strategy when you're pre-writing. There are a lot of different strategies. Here are 4 of them listed here: listing, mind mapping, free writing, and outlining. But if you mix the strategies up, you often get worse results. So it's a good idea to kind of choose one. Most people have one that they will ultimately prefer. I like listing, personally. Free writing is the second choice for me. Outlining, I kind of use outlining and listing in the same way. And I hate mind mapping. But different people use different strategies. So you'll find the one that works best for you. But different kinds of essays also benefit from different kinds of pre-writing strategies. For instance, it's not very useful to use a Venn diagram, those 2 circles that overlap, show similarities and differences. Well, it's not useful in a descriptive essay. Descriptive essay, listing is probably going to be better. Mind mapping is going to be better. It might not be particularly useful to free write for a persuasive essay. There's too many directions you can go in. You might want to start listing first or outlining first. So you want to choose the strategy that works best for the type of writing you're doing and that works best with your writing process. And that's something you'll learn with practice. You'll also want to come up with ideas and connections in the pre-writing process. Someone called me. I'll call them back in a minute. That can help you to come up with ideas and connections that'll help you to develop your points later. It'll help you to organize your points and your subpoints, and to help everything come together when you're starting to do that rough outline, when you're starting to draft in a couple of steps. You kind of want to get some idea of organization here, at least figuring out what the main points are going to be and what your subpoints, your evidence is going to be as well. And that makes everything a lot easier later on. So here's kind of an example of brainstorming, pre-writing. Should schools have dress codes? So here, this person just basically did a T-chart. Should and should not. Here are some reasons that schools should have dress codes. Peer pressure as a result of appearances decreases. Students may wear gang-affiliated clothing, causing conflict. Students may wear too revealing clothing or other offensive clothing that's distracting to other students. And then some reasons that schools should not have dress codes. Dressing individually promotes individuality. This is actually, I'm not sure what it means here. It causes students to feel more comfortable at school. Teachers can dress how they want, so students should be able to as well. And this was a slide from a website that apparently also was recorded with Screencast-O-Matic. So then you're going to want to select 2 or 3 main points from your pre-writing. And strong points will be things that you can develop further in paragraph. We'll summarize the types of evidence that you'll use in the essay. We'll respond to the thesis and respond to the prompt. You only want to have 1 main point per paragraph, but you want to have enough pieces of evidence to be able to develop that main point into a paragraph. And that'll make more sense as we go and we kind of go through examples of how to do this. So for example, the question from the prompt, do you agree with the mandates to wear masks during the pandemic? So some possible points might be to prevent the spread of COVID-19, that masks are less restrictive than other measures, and that masks allow us to maintain some sense of normalcy if I was writing this essay. So we will stop here before we start looking at thesis statements, and I will be back in just a moment.